Hi, and welcome to the FESPA Sustainability Spotlight video series. We understand that sustainability is key to future business success and can reduce negative social and environmental impacts that are essential to our communities. We're providing information with the help of our guest speakers, thank you, Einar, that will support environmental best practice to enable you to make more progress on your journey. In today's video, I'm talking with Einar Ek from Reboard, who's responsible for business development and has a holistic view of the paper fiber board market, its design process, print production, and end of life. The circular potential of naturally derived materials are of obvious interest in many applications. But I can't do the best job of introducing Einar. So Einar, I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you very much, Graham. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me in. I'm Einar Ek. Yes, you're very right. I do business development for Reboard. So my primary job is basically to find new areas in which Reboard can actually make a difference. Paper can make a difference, and Reboard in specific, obviously, for my job. And that is also outside the WISCOM industries, of course, within your territory, Graham, within your WISCOM and FESPA community. There is also a lot to be done. So you look at me as a business development for all markets, but the focus is, and I think that's very exciting, also outside the printed market right now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So our discussion today is to understand the benefits of paper fibre-based materials for exhibition builds and how they can contribute to circular economy. So I've got a few areas that I'd like to get into with you. So I think let's kick off with the first one, which is really getting a bit of insight into how sustainable forestry management works and its ability to meet the needs of the expanding demand that is taking place. So yeah, if you can give us your insight, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. This is a big theme, and it's a very interesting theme. I mean, first to the fact that there are many new industries now, many industries looking at the forest to find solutions for the CO2 problems or CO2 issues, for sure. And I think we got to look at it from the holistic perspective, as you mentioned. We got to look at it two ways. The fiber market, the wooden fiber or the paper fiber market, a huge decline internationally just a few years ago, with all the newspapers going away and other very big users of paper moving out of this picture, replaced by digital medias. And that lightens the situation for the increase that we see today. Because you are touching on something fundamental that we should discuss. But right now, there is enough fiber for everyone. And I think that although the packaging market has increased enormously, they take the waste part of what is recycling products in the world. We see that there is still not a lack of recycled fibers at the market today. So I think that if we look at the future, that's where the discussion moves on. And I think I'll get back to that, because I believe that we should first understand what we're doing today, and then figure out whether there is something in what we do today that can support the future. And if you allow me to elaborate just a little second, because this is something I'm passionate about, and thank you so much. No, so the truth is that the forest is a source of renewable materials. And that's a beautiful sentence. You know, it's a source of renewable materials. And that's what attracted me in the first place to this industry. It's an environmental opportunity that can bring value at the same time. And that is a fantastic combination. And the source of renewable materials, what does it mean? Well, where does materials come from? And this is a key question, because what we find in the world today, and I'm sure I'll repeat that during the session, it's a lack of resources.
Yeah.
So we need to understand what resources are we using and for what. And this is not only for WISCOM, this is for all possible industries and materials in this world. We have to look at this whole picture and understand it.
Well, so it's the finite nature of resources and the extractive industries that are persuading us to look at waste not as waste but as feedstock. That's kind of happening across as many areas as that can happen is generally speaking as you know, in our best interest, providing there is a reprocessing method that isn't more energy and intensive than it needs to be. But yeah.
Exactly, and it's also about how do we utilize, you know, how do we take out resources, how much is it left, how much can we take out before we start interrupting the overall, like, you know, how many cities can we actually make before animals are pushed too much together, again creating pandemics for humans. So I mean, this whole thing is connected, and that's why it's so complex and immense to discuss. But I think a very good way to start is to look at what is it that we know about what we're doing. And I can speak for paper, and I wish that all materials would have an overview of this. Not only where is the different materials, but how do we extract them and what do we use them for, and do we really need them? It's a lot of things to consider. But when the materials are there, you can say that, you know, the forest, and I also need to speak now very carefully, because the forest is not one thing. The forest is a huge diversity of all the beautiful things that nature has given us. And if you talk about the rainforest, it's a whole different problem. That's nothing to do about, you know, harvesting for paper or any of those things that we'll talk about, or what I know about. This is whole different problematics. So it needs to be treated differently. And my solutions are not the solutions for the rest of the world. But what we've done here in the Nordics, which works, and that's why I'm so big fan of it, is that the Nordic countries, when you talk about forest management here, it's actually governed by something which is called a Forest Sustainability Act. Now, that's not a set of rules. Well, it is, but it's not really written rules. It's demands, I would say, that society has put on the forest owner. And the forest owner isn't one, it's thousands. I think it's nearly 200,000 forest owners in Sweden alone. It's big. They are a country of forest. It's a big country. So I think that if you look at the Forest Sustainability Act, it states the demand that the society has put on this over time. It's polities, but it's more than 100 years old. And they're actually established to ensure that we don't misuse or cut down our forest. That this is a program to ensure that every time you cut down a tree, you ensure that the new tree, actually 3 new trees, are planted and cared for through a lifetime. And that's interesting, because the lifetime in the forest is a long lifetime. We're talking years. So that's the fundament. It's really about to live off the forest, but with it at the same time. And these traditions.
And I suppose that the cycle of maturation, because growing forest is a 30, 50 year kind of crop.
Yeah, it's more than that. And it's a very interesting point, because if you look at fiber, and we look at fiber from the Nordic forest, it's called Borealis forest. It stretches from Canada all over the Nordics and through Russia. It's a huge waste forest, slow growing, very strong fibers, and much used for the construction industry. And to make one of these the trees grow, we think at least about 100 years ahead.
Okay.
So basically, there isn't anyone in politics today, I believe, which are still on that horizon. So I think that, you know, that's a little bit the difficulty with these materials. I mean, this is after all coming back. Most of the materials that we harvest is never coming back to us. We take from the bottom of the chest. So this is a little bit, you know, is environmental sustainable forestry in Scandinavia perfect? No. It isn't. We learn all the time. We learn more about the micro ecosystems. We learn more about the spices and how it's connected. We learn more about how they need to be able to move freely around the surface of Sweden or the peninsula of Scandinavia. And they need their trees and their plants to do that. So all of these things are making changes to the way we do this. And that's how it's supposed to be. We have to follow science and adjust how we do sustainable forest management to what the science tells us at all times. And this is what we try to do. So I would say that we have the framework for something that can really work actually anywhere, but it needs to be adapted 100% to where you are in the world, the climates, the needs, the ecosystem that you find locally.
Yeah. And I suppose the capacity is the thing that has to be controlled, doesn't it? Because we've seen in many areas over extraction, you know, mismanagement of capacity. Global fishing is a great example where we we think that the seas will replenish at a pace which is just completely unrealistic, and therefore we end up with great shortages in materials.
Yeah.
So I suppose within forestry management, that is a point at which capacity is finite. But as you say, we're not there at the moment, and the resources are well managed. The systems are mature, and it's a good basis to build upon.
I would say so. I would agree with you there. It's a good system to base on. It needs to be improved. It needs to be spread. This tradition can repeat for this material, and we have to build on these cases. So yeah, we have to improve and we have to look for better. But we cannot let, let's say, perfect stand in the way of better, because this is knowledge that grows over time. It's science driven. And we will meet a lot of challenges with any materials moving into the future. Now, when it comes to the capacity, I don't think that the way that we manage our forest will actually support an increased demand for papers. As I mentioned at the beginning, right now we have a good balance between what is less material used for newspapers and magazines, books, and more in packaging on the recycled side and other paper products. So basically, we see a shift in how the fiber is used, but it won't increase the capacity. What can increase the capacity is, in the best case, if we could expand this beautiful way of managing the forest to other forest owners, other big forest countries. That's one, vision. Another one is to and which we see works is to follow the recycling technology and its advancement, and that's really happening quickly now. To install new recycling technology is what takes time, because it's not like a little box. It's big machineries and complex processes, so it's difficult to demand for the state of the art every time. But if you find a better balance and a better way of recycling materials, then of course that would allow each fiber, each little paper fiber, live a little bit longer and could perhaps become more paper products before they worn out.
And in terms of because I think paper, in the same way that cotton, the fibers become shorter as they are reprocessed.
Yes.
I can't remember what the kind of recycling, how many times you can recycle paper through different paper products is, but it's quite a few, right?
Yeah, it's again, it's a very difficult question to ask directly, because it depends on what fiber you talk about. We've done measurements on our fiber types from this Swedish forest, normally from pine and spruce. It's normally the construction materials that we use up there, which is now, the leftovers from the construction is what we base for our paper production in Sweden. And now these fibers, they claim to have a recyclability value, we call it. So how many times can you recycle? We call that the recyclability value. And that value we called 5 to 7. But that's very conservative. New science tell me, and this is not official, so this is just me hoping for the future and nothing that I want you to take my word on. But the last I heard from the science part again is that one fiber from this forest, if you treat it right, and with the modern machines, can recycle up to 25 times.
Oh, wow.
So now we have to know better, and this also tells you how difficult it is, because the difference between 5 to 7 recyclability value and up to 25, how do you trace that? How do you know that? So it's really about understanding how we, all of us in the value chain, can take care of the fiber the way that you just mentioned. You can compare it to cotton. Every time it circulates in the recycling mill, it wears a little bit. It wears and tears a little bit. Each small fiber, and you can actually see the fiber if you take any paper and you put it in two and you put it next to a light, you will actually see how the fibers look like. Now, the typical voyage is you'd start with something like Reboard or a fancy magazine or something else that look for something which is very solid. It can also be books or maps or exclusive things that needs very, very solid fiber for a long durability. Or like in Reboard's case, to replace MDF, plywoods, foams, to be strong enough to challenge existing materials. And that's why you need that's when you use the what we call the fresh fiber. And basically what you do is that when the fiber is used for a reboard, let's say you make an expo, you can reuse it, you reuse it twice, 3 times, I hope, and then you put it into recycling. Now, that fiber is valuable because it's the fresh fiber from this forest, and it's something that will he welcomed that any recycling, paper recycling plant as a big value. Because now what you do is that you throw this into the existing recycling mass, whatever country this is in, and you level up. You higher the quality on what you can get a better price for that. And that's how you always need fresh fibers to blend into the recycle mass, so that as fibers worn out and disappear on one side, you add fresh fibers on the other side, and this continues. I would say, if you allow me to just guesstimate, I would say when the reboard structure is recycled and the recycled fiber out of, the next product could be a bag, a paper bag. It could be several boxes, whatever, Amazon boxes and all of that. It can become a lot of paper products, but normally the end product would normally be tissues or toilet paper. That is normally when the fiber is totally worn out and the last voyage is done.
Sure. Okay. So if we're using fiberboard, paper fiberboard for building exhibition stands, and we're considering carbon emissions of that build, often we'll see materials like MDF, we'll see textile graphics, vinyl graphics being applied. I know I've seen some really great stands built from paper fiberboard where the visible core of the material, sometimes it's used as an aesthetic thing, other times it's hidden by V-cutting and disguise and hiding it because some people want a cleaner finish. But in terms of your experience of emissions reduction, what would you say the opportunity is like for building reduced emissions displays, and to what factor of reduction have you seen? Well,
I would say that in principle, I would embrace all materials. What we need more of is competence. To be honest, we need to know where this material come from, what emission they give, what the impact is at long term, whether they can recycle or not, and what they become if they cannot recycle. What do we do with them? Because it's been a tradition for humans for, I think, 50 to 100 years. As long as you don't see your dirt, it doesn't exist. So we keep digging it down. And that's what we do. So we don't see it, but it's everywhere. And that's why we get back as a recall now with everything from the microplastics and the pollutions that we put everywhere. So I think that's where it starts. All materials are welcome. All materials are made for a reason, but we have to use them the right way. So to put it this is just my opinion. Obviously, this is a meeting with you, so take it for what it is, Graham. But
yeah, for sure.
If you look at plastics, it's a high performance material. There is much use case for it. You got to build boats of it for sure. You got to build water protective layers and stuff for it for sure. There is hospitals need it. It's sterile. I mean, it's a fantastic product, right? But do you really want to use it as a sign in a shop where you put milk and bread? Just a hanging sign which is going to stick in the store for 10 years. It's got a breakdown time of 1,000 years, and then it becomes microplastics. Is that the right use of material, Graham? And that's the question.
It's overkill in terms of it's
an overkill, and that's what we've been doing. We're using this high performance material to big a stand at your FESPA for 3 days, and we don't even reuse it. We don't even ask anyone if they need it. So, and that's the problem. We don't think about the consequences. So I'm not against any material. I'm against using materials wrongly, and it's all competence. So I would say that.
So it's life cycle analysis is
it's a good start,
solution, isn't it? Is looking at
I agree. A life cycle analysis gives you the pure emissions and what you leave, but you got to go further. We as a company will stretch further on that. LCA is the first step. We need to move on to open up and show all the processes and see where what we can do better. And that's the mission of Reboard as part of the missions. That's the environmental mission that we have. But and yes, I think that is a fundamental for us to understand, because after all, we Reboard is part of the choice, it's part of the solution. I believe so. That's why I work so hard for this. But it's really about the competence. And now, who needs this competence? And that's a very, very good question. Who should actually, and who can bring this to life? I think if I would compare myself, I don't like to compare myself to any material. I look at it as a part of the solution, as I said. But typically, we are made to compete with MDF. And if you compare straight, I would estimate that the CO2 overall reduction we versus an MDF project would be around 80 to 90% of the CO2 specifically. And this is backed by studies that we've carried out, so this I'm pretty sure about. But again, it has to do with the use case, because I can't and I don't want to replace MDF. Everywhere is a beautiful material for what it's there for. Yeah. If you're gonna build two floors in an expo, I would go for MDF, or I would go for support from aluminium or anything or something else to build that, to be able to build that, because you can also do that with reboard, but that means more materials to keep the structure stable. So perhaps that doesn't pay off. And it's these considerations that needs to be done, both by the designer, but also, of course, by the decision makers that finally pays for and decides to do this.
So you kind of pick up on a point around education and awareness for both printing companies and design community. I think, often designers will be led by printers. Printers can advise on what will be appropriate materials for the durability requirements, the aesthetic requirements for a particular job, how printable it is, and those kind of things. But I understand at Reboard you've worked on a kind of a two-pronged approach. So you're engaging with structural designers and printing businesses. How is that working for you, and where are you up to with that process?
Obviously, when designers start collaborate, that's magical. Because for me now, I haven't been in this business for so long. I've been in the business for long, but not in Reboard for so long. So I'm just starting to see. But if you go to a museum and you're interested in art, you'd see a difference between the Rembrandt and the Porter. It isn't a difficult thing to do for you as if you're interested, or if you know anything about paintings. And it's very much the same here. And that's funny too. That's kind of cool to discover. I can't see everything, because Reboard and paper products are often made to look like anything else. They're just carriers of illusions. So they're not always supposed to be recognized, and you don't see them. And that's the point. But I must say that when I recognize certain builds, certain furniture, certain lines, certain ways of doing, I can recognize the artist behind. And that's kind of fun. And this is in a world where all of these things are already modularized. There is POPs in any size, in any shape, for any use. Totems, expo walls, systems, all of this exists today. And all that competence is there for building paper like that. Not only paper, but together with others. You take aluminium frames around it, you got environmental friendly textile coming up, you got glass, you got a whole bunch of materials which can use. And then you have others that are less environmental friendly that can also use, if it makes sense. But it's really back to that competence and using the strength of the designers, which actually choose environmental from their heart and their brain. They're as competent as I am, and much more. And that's the thing. And that's where it starts. But there are more people that needs to be advised, I would say. You also have, this is the best case. You don't even need to advise. You can just, me as a company, I'm providing you an LCA report. I'm providing you anything that you need to be able to back up what we are and our communication. That is education. Of course, I can bring people to Sweden and show them in practical life how it's done. Why do you chop down trees? When do you do it? Why do you do it? Who makes the decision? What do you do afterwards? How do you prepare it? This is a whole philosophy, and there are so many science working with this. So I'm not going to try to compete with them, but we can give everyone the headlines of the existing truth, and that is taking people to Sweden and educate them. I love to do that.
Sure.
But that doesn't really support. That's only a fraction of what we need. We need everyone in here. We need to show these modules. We need to show that we have existing products that can reuse and be spread. Because the way for everyone to make their own designs is going to be too long. We're basically going to save too much. We're going to lose too much time on doing that.
Okay, so this is templating and librarying.
That must be the future. We are a material provider. You have great artists out there. You have commercial production houses of world class out there that can make paper look like absolutely anything. The accessibility of all this beautiful design is a limitation. So it's time but we see the initiatives waking up. We see smart people with great resources and great ideas popping up now to try to change the situation. So I believe in the fact that the market can make this move, but it just goes so slowly. And again, I think it's back to the comfort of the habit and the discomfort of doing something new or trying something new and embracing the truth enough to make it matter for you as well. But listen, if the converters would know this, the converters would be able to sell this to the brands. Yeah. It's a huge gain, and it's not only a CO2 emission gain, it's actually it makes sense to use paper on events and in retail because it clicks together quicker, it's easy to use, to install, to produce. I mean, it's all those real benefits that should also be focused on. So the converters, which know both Reboard and other papers and know how to deal with it and go for it, they're very successful. I would say that what you do, Graham, is good. I mean, organizers like FESPA, when you do the FESPA Sustainability Spotlight, for instance, you try to figure out, what's the questions out there by your members. They ask you about these things, and you guys try to, show them the opportunities, highlight some new materials that can use with the environmental stories behind. That's educational. That's very good.
And I think, I mean, thank you for that. I think for us, I know that at the Global Print Expo coming up in Munich, we're building Sustainability Spotlight again with your support as you're providing material for ATC in France to make the build. And also the Club FESPA Lounge. I think Club FESPA Lounge is an interesting one because previously we've used MDF, fabric graphics, and we've used all manner of materials. And I just came to a point at which I was thinking, for a 4-day event, should we be using such a range of materials that provide some issues around reprocessing, or can we simplify and create a build that has surface pattern that might indicate that it's a different material? And to your point, it's white, you can print what you like on it, so you can make it into wood, you can make it into a textile appearance. There's a whole bunch of creative power that is at your elbow without having to go and chop down some mahogany, or you can bake it in that sense. So I'm really looking forward to looking at the carbon footprint of the build that we're creating, and we're hoping our target is that it will be around 10% of the build that we would have comparably had before using MDF and a range of other materials.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would guesstimate that's where you're going to end up. This is one of the areas where paper definitely should be used. I mean, it's indoor. You can make what you said. I mean, it's the primary material for illusions, isn't it? I mean, as you said, thanks to great, fantastic, I'd say, printer innovations over the last years. Now working not only with perfect color reproduction, which is beautifully outlined on the Reboard, but they're also making it and 3D effects and stuff like that to make it the realism incredible. And I've seen many examples over the last couple of years where this has been taken to the extreme. You can basically scan things now, anything that you want, any material, any old pattern that you want to reproduce, and you can reproduce it to perfection. And that makes use of original materials, which is very, very environmentally heavy, marble, heavy, hardwood, stone types, things which are widely used. They will continue use when you need it. I'm not going to replace your counter desk with paper. I'm not going to do
where you need a 10-year durability, you'll use material, but
exactly everything else, right? Everything else. There you go. So small things, design elements, whatever you need, whole walls, POP stores, everything with a limited use everything has a limited use, but within the years. And it all depends on the business case, and it all depends on what application you make. So we're back to the designer. What is the right material for what application? And right there, what you're talking about, I think reboard is at its best when it performs in expos.
Yeah, I agree. Well, look, I think it's been a really interesting discussion, and it's difficult in the short amount of time to get very deeply into some of the topic areas. But as always, our kind of intention is that we stimulate consideration and thinking about how we can do things differently, recognizing that there are business advantages in reducing emissions in the supply chain of our clients. It's something that is only going to grow in importance, and it matters when it comes to client relationships. So
no, it does indeed. It does indeed, Graham. And it's big themes, and there are hundreds of PhDs brought in. It's nothing that we can sit there and solve, but we can absorb it, and we can observe it too, and we can figure out, what can I do in my industry and in my life. It's easier to think about it as a private person, really, because I'm just working for this company. Becomes, you work with a passion, but it's still not as close to you as the personal decisions, like, for instance, buying a new car. But isn't it just the same? Isn't it just the same there? What car do you buy? What's the reasons for buying? Well, it's got nothing to do with environment, does it? Well, you got the electrical part, which can, but what is the LCA of a total car, being it gas, diesel, or L? And what is the cost of the fuel? Not in money, but in resources. And I know that I think a great company like Polestar, they promised us an LCA report some time back, and I really hope they keep that, because that's what I want. I don't want to study that 1,000 pages. I'm going to be an expert. No, I want the headlines. I want to know how much of the key materials are used in that car that I'm just about to buy, and what impact does that have? Not only on emissions, but also when you talk about how much is left about these materials and the resource use, because that's what it cooks down to. So it's not so complex. It's about thinking.
Yeah, I think you raised a really good point in that, I'm certainly, as a consumer, trying to make more informed decisions about, what I buy, how much reuse I can get from something, the simple fact of what contributes to the emissions of the lifetime of a product. And things like clothing is quite easy. When you buy a pair of denim jeans, you just don't have to wash them so often. So the emissions reduction, actually, one of the key benefits comes from the energy saved by not washing something again and again, not necessarily the embodied emissions in the manufactured product. And as you say, we're in a world of complexity, and we don't yet have transparency and visibility of many of the impacts. But if we start thinking, what can we do better? How can we have, in our own way, an opportunity to contribute towards reducing, recycling, reusing, then we are involved, and we're doing our part. And I think there are so many industries that contribute massively more than our own into the issues surrounding global warming, climate change, but we still have the power to be able to do things ourselves and to behave in a way that respects the value of our earth and the people who we're working with in it. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how over the next decade technologies advance, behaviors change from being what arguably is an overly consumptive world to one where people can just be a bit more thoughtful about what they're doing. So I think at this point, I think it's time for us to draw our chat today to an end. But I'd like to thank you, Einar, very much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure. And for our viewers, if you are able to come to the Global Print Expo in Munich, which is a great place to see a myriad of suppliers. You know, the who's who of the specialty print sector will be there with new innovation, new products. And if you remember, come and join us at the FESPA Club FESPA Lounge, where you'll see Reboard in action, and certainly the value of paper-fibre board. The other thing that we're doing at the event is we've got the Sustainability Spotlight stand, which is going to feature useful information around the topic of sustainability, carbon reduction, energy reduction, and these important topics that we're all getting amongst. But we're also going to be featuring other innovative materials from textile and graphic applications that are kind of leading the march on transformation. And I think that's the key here. This is about transformation. If you can do better, keep doing better, because it's all useful. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you'll come and join some of the other sessions. And Einar, I will look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Graham. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure being here. And I look forward to see the results of your great initiatives at FESPA.
Thank you.